I just noticed now that the start time indicator on here is wrong. Oh my gosh. I just noticed that. Oh my gosh. I forgot to set the start time. Yeah, the start time is right now. 8 p.m. Pacific time, which is standard every Friday. I'm so sorry about that. Oh my gosh! I'm just looking at the thing. It says scheduled for 5:15. It's like 3 hours ago. So no, that is not correct. So it's scheduled for 8 p.m. as it usually is every Friday. Hello from Dresden, Germany. Hey Sanchez, Robert P. Hello guys, Rob. DB defiantly trill. So guys, yes, sorry about that. It's not canceled. Just had the wrong time slot on there. Uh, wow, that's really messed up. Really messed up. So yeah, so sorry about that. If you follow my channel, I start at the same time every Friday, which is 8 p.m. Pacific time. So that's the always the same schedule. So it doesn't. I don't really change that. It hasn't changed in years. So it's not going to change now. So it's always been adult beverage Friday for the last, I don't know, 7 years now that I've been doing this. 7 years. So yeah. So adult beverage Friday, and it's always been the same. And early today, no, it's not. We're late. We're apparently we're late according to the scheduled time in there, which is wrong. So good to see you, Red Jed Squirrel. Good to see you, Great Gold. Okay, so again, the start time is 8 p.m. every Friday night. So rarely do I ever change that. I think one time I got caught in a restaurant and I arrived late and we started a little bit later, but usually there's no variation on this. It's 8 p.m. every Friday night. Can the Google phones you FIPS 142 compliant encrypt? That has nothing to do with anything. Um, it's a good question, but not necessarily about the specific standard that you're talking about. But some of you don't actually understand what's in an Android phone. James Kelly. So greetings, Mysticulous. So let me just say this. I haven't talked about the Google phones in months. I think my last video on it was maybe October, something like that. And the Google video became viral, and then I haven't done any videos about it since. It went viral in December, and to be honest, a lot of people just watch that one video and don't really have a good understanding of what it is, and I haven't really talked about it since. So it's time to kind of like go back a little bit because I get asked the same question about it, and it's time to educate you a little bit about what a Google phone is and why it's important and why it's connected to my last video, which is it's one of the trifecta issues that we can solve. In my last video, the trifecta is that there's a trifecta of identities which are used to track you, and these are inferred identities, and from that they can connect to real identities, and once they're matched they can't really be separated. And the three elements that I mentioned are the IP address. Somebody actually was saying here, oh, IP address is not that important. Correction, IP address is very important. And then the next two things I mentioned was, second point was the what was the second point? The third point was the browser and device fingerprint, the device fingerprint. Oh, the second one was location. So it was IP address, location, and the device fingerprint. And these are very important things to stop, because if a third party gets a hold of one of these, then pretty much your privacy is lost forever. So it's one of these that you don't want to to ever reveal, because then it will be a bigger project to say, okay, now I got to send this information to cancel out whatever they know about you or me. So you have to now do disinformation to cancel. You can't do that. It takes a while. But once they know you, it's terrible. It's hard to disengage, especially if you've been very active on the internet, as some of you who are politically minded and active politically and are always making comments on Twitter and Facebook and so on. You are the ones completely identified, and it's hard to disengage because of the trifecta. So the IP address, the location, which is your home location, and the third is a device fingerprint. Do you do everything you say? Yes, I do more than what I say, but I can't teach all of you that. So I teach you what you can reasonably do. I do a lot more, because it depends on the threat. So somebody like me is more of a target. There's many people who don't like what I talk about, particularly the corporations that I speak against. They don't like what I say, so they're gonna send trolls in here. By the way, that's one of the clues that you get. The more popular I am, the more you see trolls come in here speaking nonsense. They'll just say anything negative about me just to make sure they can say it, and they'll make comments about my products or just in general just defame me. And just understand, folks, a lot of those are hired people. They're actually paid by corporations to come in here and make sure that if somebody doesn't like what I say, somebody will come in here and try to say something negative to make me lose face and make me look like I'm a false prophet of some sort. So please, guys, judge for yourself. I'm pretty open. Even though I'm a privacy guy, you can, I hope I'm pretty authentic, and I am what I am. There's no games in what I play. A lot of you buy products from me, and as you know, I do not leave anyone unsatisfied. If you're unsatisfied, I refund your money. Nobody's ever had an issue because I don't do that. I don't do that. So if you have an issue, I refund your money. It's my mistake, not my mistake, whatever. It doesn't make any difference to me. I want to make sure everyone's whole, and at whatever cost to me, it doesn't matter. The point is that you cannot, you will find that there are trolls that will come in here and speak against me, and often they're speaking nonsense. It doesn't even make any sense. They'll just say something negative and say, well, I can say this about you, and it's like they don't even know anything, and you can tell. So hopefully you can tell. Now let me just ask before I continue: is my mic okay right now? Because I turned it up. Could you imagine a global decentralized home DSL mesh of Raspberry Pis serving videos like YouTube? You can actually do that, but it's you need a mass of people to actually do it. A community could do it. Let's say you live in an area that's full of preppers. You're in a prepper community. You can actually set up a mesh. All you need are Wi-Fi routers in each house. If you had a Wi-Fi router in each house dedicated to be a mesh, you could have your own internet in a local area. So yeah, that's actually doable, but it takes a commitment. So I've seen some companies start doing that, where they start selling devices that can be a mesh, but it requires a lot of people to do it. Otherwise, you don't have a signal. So I participated in the mesh here, and I have to use dish antennas to reach, because the next contact is like 30 miles away, and that's very far. And I have to use a specialized dish, and even that, the power wasn't strong enough. So you can't do it until everyone is so disgusted that they say, okay, we'll all get our own internet. And you can't do that. You can't do that. Unfortunately, I do not have the power to convince people to install a mesh device in your neighborhood, Can you imagine if your entire neighborhood was on a mesh network? You don't need the internet. Everyone in the area can talk to each other without an internet. So even if the internet dies, you could do it as long as you have electricity. So just iSocialFit was not a paid shill. iSocialFit was a paid employee. iSocialFit worked for Zuckerberg, so he was a paid employee. So I don't call that a shill because he was pretty frank. We knew what he was. He admitted to being he said he was an executive, and he was somehow involved with Facebook development. So, and there's no reason to dispute what he said. So, mesh quantum will be here soon enough. Zero latency. So anyway, back to what I was talking about, which is the Google phones. So I talked about the Google phones last October, and that's the video that became viral in January. And a lot of people still don't understand what that really means, and they kind of read quickly about the topic, and they don't really understand what that means. And looking here, I actually forgot to bring my own phone. These are a couple of examples of the Google phones that I have. This is a Moto G7. That's one model. This is a Pixel 3. I'm sure I have many more in here. This is a Moto G7 Plus, big one. I have another Pixel 3 in here, and I'm sure I have a stack of phones behind me of different models here. Okay, these are Pixel 4s, 128 gigabyte Pixel 4s. So just many phone models can be done. Now, what exactly are these, and why should you care? You see, people ask me, how do you protect yourself, from a privacy point of view? And we often say go get a VPN, but that really isn't enough. It's got to be paired with other activities. And there's kind of a minimum before you can say that you can actually get a little bit of privacy. And you really need a combination of things. And VPN aside, let's just say you already have a VPN. You can't really disengage from the trackers. Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much. You can't really disengage from trackers unless you have a phone that is not connected to Google. So this is an example of a Google phone. And for all intents and purposes, it's a standard Android. So in this particular case here, this is a Android 10 device. So this is a Motorola G7, and this particular one has Android 10 on it. We don't load Android 10. We load a AOSP, Android open source project, and it's called a custom ROM. It's not the original Android. It's modified. You can put the original Android. That's actually okay too. But the one we put in is Lineage OS. So this one has Lineage OS on it. And which is just a slight rework in appearance to Android 10. Primarily it's Android 10. So if you were to take this and compare it to a standard Android 10, Google Android 10, it pretty much works pretty much the same. There really isn't, the way the interface works and everything looks the same. So when you get a Google phone, it's not like you suddenly have something completely different. If you've never used an Android, I understand. But for some of you that use Android, it really isn't that much different than a regular phone. What is different about a Google phone, and this is really one of the most important points in here, is that one, there's no Google. And that actually means a lot of things, and a lot of people don't actually understand what that means. By not having Google, it means there's no Google app of any sort. There's no Google Maps, no Gmail, no Chrome, no Google application of any sort, no Google Drive, no YouTube. Uh, so, and then there's some other things that are not on here that is the hidden apps that Google puts in here, and the one that is the most deadly are a couple things that Google puts on the phones, and one is telemetry. On every Google phone, there's telemetry. By telemetry, it means every time you use an app, it sends a signal to Google saying that you're using an app from Google Play, how long you've been using it, and what your activities with it. And the other thing that happens on the phone that most people don't realize is that it's actually a 24/7 location spying device. So I am so uncomfortable being near any phone that is not de-Googled. And one of the reasons is that the phone actually tracks your location 24/7. So can you imagine going to a protest and, walk around with your phone? If the authorities want to catch you, as in Washington, D.C., they will catch you and say, you were there at Washington, D.C. If they don't want to catch you, they won't bother, such as those in Oregon. So depending on who wants to catch you, because some people say, well, I was participating in the riots in Oregon and nobody caught me. Yeah, it depends on if they're interested in catching you. If they want to catch you, they can catch you just from the phone. It's very easy for them to do that. All they have to do is do what is called geofencing. So what geofencing means is that they're going to tell Google to tell them, the authorities, anyone located within a certain area at a certain time, and to give the phone ID identification. Many identifiers can be used. IMSI, IMEI, which they can then go to the carrier and find your real name. So if they wanted to, they can subpoena that information from Google, and Google does respond to that subpoena, and they will actually give you, they don't even need a subpoena, they'll just give it to you. If you ask and you're law enforcement, they will just give it to you. And what they will give you is, for Google and Apple both, they will say, okay, geofencing, meaning in a geographical location, will say who was within that, and they will know because you have a Google phone. Now, how do they know when you have a Google phone? Because when you have a Google phone, the phone, even with location settings off, you don't need any kind of location permission for this. Google and Apple can track the location of any phone 24/7. And if you have a newer version of Android, Google Android, then you can also have contact tracing, which is Bluetooth. So the tracking that they do is Wi-Fi, and they also have Bluetooth. Bluetooth is short distance, and they can see if two people were really close. But the main one that they use is Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi can cover an area, and they can say, "Oh yeah, we spotted you. You're within a certain location." And what happens is, if you're outdoors, your device is using GPS to find your exact location. If it can't see a satellite because you went indoors, it switches to Wi-Fi triangulation, which is finding Wi-Fi routers near you, and they already have a location on every router in existence. So that's included. Thank you, Adam. That's included in every Google phone. Okay. Now, what happens when you de-Google? You can't turn off Wi-Fi. Somebody said, I turn airplane mode on, and I feel better now. No, please, don't waste my time. Okay, that doesn't do anything. You don't believe me? Go ask Snowden. No, airplane mode does not do a thing. Doesn't do anything. So, airplane mode says do not connect to a Wi-Fi. It prevents you from connecting to a Wi-Fi router. It doesn't stop the receiving mode, which is all it needs to spot your location, is to be in a receiving mode. Okay? It never stops being in receiving mode, the Wi-Fi. There's no switch for that. So you can't switch it off. Or they don't let you switch it off. I'm sure there's a way to switch it off, but they won't let you. If your phone is on, Wi-Fi is on, Bluetooth is on, and it's now able to do Wi-Fi triangulation. So what is the consequence of all this? Now let me just make sure that we understand this clearly. If you have a normal phone, be certain, and a normal phone includes iPhone, iOS, and Android. If you have a normal phone, then be aware that your location is always in their database. This is not a disputable thing. This is reality. Get Snowden to disagree with me or something. Okay, get somebody to disagree. You can't take battery out of these phones. If you have a phone where you can take battery out, then that would be great. But since they want to be waterproof, they don't give you that option. Okay, so sensors off. That's a different topic. So there's no sensors off when it's shipped to you. It's a standard iPhone or Android. So there's a lot of things being tracked about you when you're using a standard Google phone or standard iPhone. So like I said, location tracking is 24/7. You can't stop. It's always going. The other thing that's happening is the telemetry. So every action you take on the internet, notifications, whenever you click on an app, all of that registers with Google. So they know exactly how many times you clicked an app, how many times you went to Facebook, how many times you did whatever. And of course, there's Siri on an iPhone, and on Google, there's Google Assistant, or if you have a Samsung, you have your Bixby, and so on. And that's always on too. So if you combine all that, I mean, this is the absolute spy machine. I mean, talk about absolute. I mean, there's no escaping. You have this, and they know everything about what you're doing. They know every location you've been in, what you've been up to all day, who you're talking to, who's near you. I mean, it's crazy. Now, what makes the Google phone different? And once you understand what the other phones do, then you'll start understanding what makes a Google phone different. For one thing, a Google phone has no login. This has never logged in. This is the Google phone. Never logged in. There's no login. There's no place to log in. So there's nowhere to tell whoever who owns the phone. Okay? There's no identity on the phone. Nobody knows who owns the phone. On a Google phone, that thing I was talking about with the location tracking, which will spot who owns the phone just by location, that doesn't exist. On a Google phone, it doesn't exist. So there's no 24/7 tracking on here. You can still use GPS, but with permission, but there's no central authority that's being sent the Wi-Fi scanning data. So that doesn't exist. Okay? Next, on a Google phone, so it's called Firebase. Firebase is the telemetry, so there's no connection to Google there. The OS on Google is, of course, owned by Google. So the Google OS, the standard Android, actually then can see the identity of the phone. What's the identity of the phone? Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dean. Thank you very much. What's the identity on the phone? The identity of the IMEI. The information on the modem is called IMEI, International Equipment Identifier. What is the M? International Mobile Equipment Identifier, IMEI. And then when you put a SIM card in, it has the International mobile subscriber identity, IMSI. So the SIM card is IMSI. The modem here is the IMEI. It also has some other identifiers in here that's unique to the phone. There's the MAC address. Those are hardware. They're hardware numbers. There's also another number. It's called the serial number. That's also in the phone. The manufacturer of the phone knows that. So there are device identities on here that definitely identify who the phone is. So it doesn't matter that you take out the SIM card to do all this. If Google's on here or Apple, both of them can actually find out everything about the identity of the phone. So if you give the phone to your son and say, okay, this is your phone now, I'm going to buy a new one, they would know that because they would know that what the identity of the phone is. And Google knows that because it's part of what Google can see, and it's sent to the Google database. Now, on a Google phone, there is no Google. Remember, no Google apps are on here. And how do we know this? How do we know there are no Google apps on here? Because the way this works, guys, when you install Android, there are actually many layers to Android. There's the Android Open Source Project, AOSP. Android Open Source Project. And if you didn't know that, you can look at the source code of the Android Open Source Project, which I can go to and look at the source code. And I'm a programmer. I can look at it. I can see what's in there. I looked for some of these things that I was talking about, and it's not there. It's not on the Android Open Source Project. Thank you, Adam, again. So why is it not on AOSP? Because, of course, communications between Google and the Google database are private. So they wouldn't want to reveal the conversations that occur between Google and the home base. So they're not in the open source. So we already know for sure that there is no communications between the OS, operating system on the phone, and Google because it is not in the open source. So the way the open source is made, it's actually compiled direct from the open source that is available to all. So there's no playing around and inserting malware or anything like that. You can't do that. So when we get the phone, the open source then is taken by the manufacturer of the phone called the OEM. In this case, this is a Motorola phone. So Motorola gets the Android open source from the Android open source project, which is managed by Google, but they don't put their code in there, but it's still managed by Google. And then, so this now gets the open source project, and then the OEM adds their own software, meaning mostly device drivers and things to control the modem, the cell modem, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that, the camera, the screen, all of these little drivers the OEM adds. So actually then it's unique to the phone. So every phone will have a different one based on the manufacturer. Now, once you do that, then the last thing that an OEM does is they install GApps, Google Apps. So then what Google Apps does is it actually removes some of the programs that were pre-installed by Android open source and replaces them with Google versions. So you can't just go and say, well, I'm going to delete the Google programs on here. I'm going to root my phone, delete the Google programs. You can't do that because they did not add Google programs. They replaced. So if you take it out, the phone will not function. So you have no chance of removing Google code from the phone. You can't remove it. So the only solution is to install AOSP before Google adds the Google Apps. That's what a Google phone is. We install the AOSP or some version of AOSP. In my case here is Lineage OS. There are many other versions, and then on top of that, the OEM stuff remains. So the OEM gets their own code in here for running the drivers, and then the OEM is the phone maker, so in this case Motorola, and then the other one is the um, AOSP, but no Google code on here at all. So what can you do on a Google phone? So this is the, we get into, at least now, why this is a little bit safer, because there's no connection to Google. You can actually load some Google apps on here indirectly. You can't go to the store because there's no store. And the way you do this is you can either take the programs, they're called APK files, from third-party sites, and there's, just to name a few, there's F-Droid, there's Aurora Store, and then there's sites like APK Mirror, and so on. And you can actually take any program that runs, that you can find on Google Play Store, and you can actually install it on the phone without a Google Play Store. So for example, if you want to install Brax.me on a phone, you do not have to get it from a store. You can just go to Brax.me website and download the app, and then it goes to your downloads folder. You click on it, and it will ask you to install, and you say yes, it installs. And then it will run just like any program. Now, so basically, what I'm saying here is that any APK file can be loaded on the phone through some other areas, and it will work on a Google phone with some limitations. So a Google phone isn't some strange device where you look at it and it looks very, very different. It acts pretty much like a normal Android, except, like I said, there's no Google on it. And most apps will work with some exceptions. Okay, what are the exceptions? The exceptions, guys, are that it cannot accept paid apps. Any paid app cannot work because there's no Google to handle the payment processing. So the payment processing side is not included on the phone. That's handled by the Play Store. There's no Google Play Store. There's no accounting. So you can't do that. So people wonder why you cannot run Uber driver or Lyft driver or one of those, because of payments. So you can't have payments. The other thing that doesn't work a lot of times is anything to do with Google Maps. So if the app requires Google Maps intensively, it can use a substitute that we provide, but not always. And if it doesn't like the substitute, it doesn't want to work because it wants to work with real Google. Those apps do not work. Strangely enough, I can run my boat navigation on here on the Google phone. It runs perfectly fine with the GPS. And they don't use Google Maps, so they have their own maps, so it doesn't matter. And then there's also an alternate mapping here called OpenStreetMaps, which I can also use. And here's a funny thing that is kind of strange. Waze runs. Waze is Google, but it's separate. It doesn't use Google Maps. So because Waze does not use Google Maps, it actually runs on a Google phone. So it's the only Google app that you could think about running, because it actually does run. I'm not suggesting you use Waze. If you have a way of not using it, it's better. I suggest always buy your own standalone navigation. Don't rely on the phone to use Waze. But you can. Waze is kind of a killer app for some, especially those in cities. And if you want to do it, you can do it. It's available, and you can run it. So it works pretty much like a normal phone. Now there's some inconveniences when you cannot run the Play Store. So I'll tell you, it's not really that inconvenient. So for example, most apps will work, like I said, unless they require payments. Or there's a small number of apps, very small, that require intense connection with Firebase. Firebase is the database and all the other features of Google. And some applications need notifications. And notification does not always work well on a Google phone from Google. So how does that work? What we do, and by the way, this is not always true of all of the ROMs. For example, some ROMs like Graphene OS doesn't actually have any way of doing any connection with Google, even a fake one. So you can't do the fake connection to Google on a Graphene OS. On Lineage OS, which is what I use, you can. So for privacy reasons, it's fine. I don't see a problem with using Play Store apps on here with some limitations. So I'll tell you what those are. What we do is we install a Google spoofer, a Google services spoofer, and the spoofer is called MicroG. So we install MicroG on the phone and we set it up so that it can spoof the notification from Google. So it actually sends an identity to Google and says, oh yeah, this is an actual Google account and here's the account. And then send us notifications and send us Google Maps and whatever. So it goes through that, except MicroG sends a fake identity. It doesn't use the real identity. There's also a Play Store that we install. The Play Store we install is called Aurora Store. And you do not log into Google on Aurora Store. You log in anonymously. Aurora Store has access to all of the Play Store stuff that are not paid, the free ones. Every free app, like games and everything, can be accessed. And when you use the Aurora Store, you can download pretty much anything, and some apps will complain and say, this app needs Google services, and you ignore the message, and most of the time they still work. 90% work. The only major exceptions are anything that requires payments. So if they require payment, they're not going to work. At least the payment portion of it. So if you use even a standard Google Play Store app and you're getting it from some of these other stores that we preload on here, which is the Aurora Store, the phone never logs in. So the request to get the app goes to Aurora, Aurora goes to Google, Google responds to Aurora, Aurora sends the app to your phone. So 3 steps. So they still don't know who the phone is. So there's actually no identity to the phone. Thank you, Jiri. Jiri, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So there's no identity to the phone. Okay, so we're back to that. No identity to the phone. And what is the main identity to the phone? And let me just tell you how your little tricks will not work if you don't have a Google phone. So just give you an example. You talk publicly on some social media site, and Google can see what app you're launching. So that's, let's say, let's talk about before Parler was removed from the Play Store. Let's say you were using Parler, okay? So what happened was Google can actually see that you not only downloaded Parler, but can see the device identity, can see, oh, this is registered to your Gmail account and you have a credit card with your real name on it and address. So we know exactly who owns the phone and what this person is doing. Okay? Do you really want that kind of information in the hands of Google? Well, I certainly don't. That's not acceptable to me. I just want to be left alone. So I don't want to be bothered with things like, oh yeah, somebody's keeping an eye on everything I do. That's really disturbing. It disturbs me in a big way when I know somebody's watching me. For one thing, you start to hold back on your speech. When you know somebody's watching, you talk a little bit, more kindly. You're not as aggressive. You will kind of waver on an opinion so that people don't know what you think. That's the effect of not direct censorship, but somebody keeping an eye on you. It changes behavior in a certain way, and it actually takes away the truth, the reality of what you really want to say and what you want to do, because somebody's eyeing you. Well, on the Google phone, you never have to worry about that. Some people say, okay, I got a Google phone from you because I sell these phones. What do I need to do? Do I need to do anything special? What do I need to do when I get the phone? The answer is Nothing. Just use it because there's no identity to it. Therefore, they don't know who actually has the phone, and the only way that they can spot you is by IP address, which you can handle hopefully with a VPN. So you need a VPN with it. If you're on the road using mobile data, then you don't need a VPN. But at home, you need a VPN. Okay, you need it. If you're not at home, then I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, if you're on the road, okay, no big deal. But when you're at home, use a VPN. Now, with that, then the phone becomes kind of like a murky identity, and they can't really pinpoint any activity to this phone because they don't have a serial number, they don't have an IMSI, they don't have an IMEI, they don't have a serial number, they don't have a Google ID, they don't have an Apple ID. They really don't nothing. It's just a generic phone. As far as they're concerned, you could be on Windows OS. They're not going to know. This could have been Windows OS. They're not going to know. That's the beauty, my friends, of the Google phones. And this is a tried and true technology. Cybersecurity experts have made other ROMs. Some I've already mentioned. And they're made for security because they know that it's safe for the most part, with some limitations, because they saw the source code on AOSP. So the source code makes it clear that this is not being spied on by Google or Apple. Now, it's not absolute, and this is the part. I can't de-Google an LG V20 phone, but looks like a nice enough phone, but I can't de-Google that. So what's the what was I saying before? I should not have answered that, and I got lost in what I'm trying to say here. So when you're on a de-Google phone, then you can do anything you want, because without an identity, the Google side of stuff, all the big tech, MAGA FD, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, they're okay. They're not a threat with a de-Google phone. Now, they're still a threat. It's not, the way to remove a threat is to not carry a phone. So if you're Snowden, I'm not going to tell you that there's no threat. There is. And the threat now is from the carrier side, because there are parts to a phone that have nothing to do with Google whatsoever, and they're more a faction, they're more on the side of Qualcomm. So Qualcomm has the chip in the U.S. phones. Most of the phones in the U.S. use the Qualcomm chip. And the Qualcomm chip on here has software that is not open source. We don't know what it does. And it's been subject to hacks using the SS7 hack, SIM jacking hack. There's many things. There's a Stingray hack. Basically, the phone side can be hacked by a third party, mostly government. Okay? So it's a different threat. That's not a MAGA FD threat. Again, MAGA FD, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter. That's not, the carrier threat is more government. So the carriers are subject to whatever the government wants, and if somebody wants to track you from the phone side, they can do it. For example, they can send text to your phone. They can turn your phone on to turn on the mic, basically making a call. They can basically trigger all the calling side, receiving the call, see your texts, and all that. Now, if you're not using the phone for calling, then you're okay. It's only from the calling side. If you remove the SIM card, that connection is broken. So the carrier threat is tied to the SIM card. Without the SIM card, the identity of the phone is removed. So if I were in a protest and I said, I want to be, invisible in a protest, two things I would do. I would have a de-Google phone. That means my location's not going to be available. And then number two, I would take off the SIM card. I could still play with my phone and play games, but without the SIM card, then I'm not subject to Stingray. So I just want to make sure that we understand there's like two threats here. I don't usually concern myself with the Stingray, SS7, and all that side of the threat, because that's more a product of active surveillance from the government. So unless I'm doing something that I like I said, like attending a protest or something like that, if I'm just doing normal things at home, I'm not going to worry about the carrier side of things. So I don't talk about that threat except in one video where I said who's spying on your phone. So I just want to make that clear so we're understanding, where the threats are. Okay, so I hope that, I wish there was an open source SIM network. Yeah, right. Like they would give that to you. Now, before I continue here, let me just tell you something. And what I'm going to tell you is Linode. So my live streams are sponsored by Linode. Been a long time sponsor of this channel. And you can see there's a link there, linode.com/Rob Braxman. If you use that link, you get a $100 credit for your first 2 months on Linode if you want to set up a server, Linux server, if you want to play around with Linux, set up a website, do Nextcloud, and generally play around with a server. Some of them you can do for as little as $5 a month. You don't even, if you want to play with a server, $5 a month you can learn on their server. And then when you expand, you can say, oh, okay, I'm just going to set up 10 websites on that $5 a month plan. You can do that. So that's fairly inexpensive. So I've been using Linode myself for a while now, and they're just a company that has very good service. And I'm really, of all the ISPs that I've dealt with, this is the one that I will always go back to. They are a private company. They're actually older than AWS, Amazon AWS, and they're a private company. They're nowhere near the size of AWS, but they really have good service. They really are. They're very friendly. They deal with their clients very well, and I've had so many issues like VPN attacks and so on, and they've been a great resource, and I recommend them highly. So if you need servers, consider using Linode. Okay, so let me start looking at some of your questions here. Do not forget to like the video. Thank you, Socratic Curiosity. So is it really uncomfortable to use the Google phone, guys? To be honest with you, where's my... let me see. So this is kind of a big phone. This is a... let me see if I get a smaller one here. Because this one is a Pixel 4 XL. And this is a smaller one. Oop, wrong phone. Here. Oh, I get all the large phones here right now. Where's all the small phones? Can't find a small phone when you need one. Okay. This is a Pixel 4, which is pretty tiny. So this is the larger one. This is the Pixel 4 XL. This is the highest model that you can degoogle at the moment. Okay, so this is the newest you can degoogle. You cannot degoogle a current phone, and we only do certain models. Like we do all the Pixels up to Pixel 4. So if we don't have it, you can bring it to us, and we can do it for you. Yeah, let's just give you a sense of size there. Yeah, so this is the XL size, and this is the smaller one. which is the one I use. I use a small one, and it's really a nice phone. It's very nice quality phone, waterproof, uh, and it's expensive. It's an expensive phone. Whereas these are less expensive. These are the Motorola's. They're about half the price. So this is half the price of that. So my phones are not that expensive. The least expensive one we have when we have stock is the Google Pixel XL, which we get brand new. It's an old model, but we get them brand new. So the battery's fresh, and that's very inexpensive. And then we're gonna shift to Pixel 2. We're gonna do Pixel 2 because we're running out of Pixel XLs. So the Pixels are very reliable. The problem is that de-googling a phone is kind of difficult because the carriers don't want you to de-google. So what happened is, so these models, like this is a Motorola G7. This can be de-googled all the time. There's no issue there. And if it's a G7, it can be de-googled. G7 Plus can be de-googled. G7 Play can be de-googled. G7 Power, no. I have not succeeded with G7 Power. No Samsung of any sort can be de-googled in the US. You need an international phone. And so if your model number ends with an F, or it ends with a U or W, can't do it. Some people can de-google the international versions that end with a F. So I don't know what the code means. Maybe F means foreign and U means USA. I don't know. But the F ones can be de-googled by someone, not me. I don't know. I have not done any Samsung phone. So the problem is, de-googling is a very intense process, and it takes a lot of learning to do it, and you have to learn by model. Each model is completely different. So we ourselves only concentrate on some models because that's all we can do. And we need to be able to get stock. So we only do all the Pixels from Pixel 1 to Pixel 4 and anything in between. Although I only sell Pixel 1, Pixel XL, Pixel 3, so we skipped the 2, Pixel 3, Pixel 4, Pixel 4 XL. Those are the only ones we sell. So, but we can do, if you have a Pixel 2, Pixel 3a, any of the in-between versions on there, we can de-google them. I have done them, so they're fine. Shiro the Fox, thank you so much. So we can de-google all that. Now, just some tricks of the trade here, so to let you know. Unfortunately, not every Google phone Pixel can be de-googled. Just like you cannot de-google the Samsungs that come from the USA from carriers like Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T. You can also not de-google a Pixel that comes from the carrier. So the only Pixel 4a is brand new. The highest we do is 4. Pixel 4, Pixel 4 XL, cutoff. 4a is brand new. Okay, so basically, not all Pixels can be done. Now, fortunately, we have a wholesaler. We buy wholesale, and they pre-check the phones to make sure they can be OEM unlocked. So basically, 50% of Pixels cannot be unlocked. So we don't buy those. So if you buy from us, we already know because we buy wholesale, so somebody already checked it. So it's if you have an existing Pixel and you bought it from Google Store, you can test to see if it's unlockable. So it usually is if it's from Google Store. If you bought it from Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, no, can't do it. Okay, can't do it. So what do? Sell it. Do you know how easy it is to sell a phone? I do not work with that, Carter. We only do what we do. Um, so yeah, it's very easy to sell a phone. Put it on eBay, somebody will buy it. And you'll get the market price for it. It's very good. It's easy to. I buy and sell phones everywhere. So I know how easy it is to buy a phone and sell a phone. So it's very easy to sell a phone. So if you have a Google that is not from the Google store, well, don't fret. Just sell it and get another one, or get from me that we already pre-checked that it is unlockable. So just some of the good news there. Now I have not tried doing some of the Chinese phones. The only Chinese phone I've really well, all phones are Chinese, so that doesn't really help. But by what I mean is a Chinese name phone like Xiaomi. The Of all the known Chinese brands, the only one that I've done is a OnePlus. So we can do a OnePlus 6. That's the newest one we would do, is that OnePlus 6. So we do OnePlus 6. I think it's the only model I would do, OnePlus 6 of that. We don't do the Oppos and the Xiaomis and all that. You can probably do it, but I don't do it because they're not in heavy supply in the U.S. anyway. So I wouldn't know how to get stock of it. Okay, so just so you understand that de-googling is very, very specific. It takes a lot of time to do. If I have to work on a new phone, it may take me 2 weeks to learn how to do a new phone. So we do quite a few models now. So think about how much time it took to learn that. Let's see. Yeah, I must have done like 15 to 20 models now, and then we just selected the ones we're going to use. What are your thoughts on exposed apps like Device ID Master and Brax Privacy Lua that can randomize every values to track you on reboot per app funnel apps offline and services? Well, that doesn't really matter on a Google phone. You don't need to do that because there's no app that has access to that data. Android 10 actually limits device fingerprint access except to Google, but there's no Google, so there's no threat for that. So no, you don't need to do that. That's not necessary. So I don't like rooting phones because you open yourself up to more danger. So I don't do that. I'm interested in using Sailfish on a Sony. You can, Sailfish is of course a Linux distro with a Android emulator. So that opens up some compatibility issues as well as speed issues. It's not going to run as fast as a straight Android. So there'll be some issues with that. But when it's running Android, I tend to wonder what is the advantage of using Sailfish if you're going to use Android on it anyway. So it'll work. I'm okay with Sailfish, but there's nothing. It's not better because you're using Android. Now you can use Sailfish without Android, and if you're willing to do that, then yeah, that's going to be better. But to be honest with you, and this is something that most people don't understand, is that Android is safer security-wise. I'm talking security here, not privacy, security. From a security point of view, I think there's no dispute that Android 9, Android 10 is better than Linux. I know the Linux people don't want to hear that, but the reality is Linux was not designed as a mobile platform. So there's certain things that just it doesn't lock it up for mobile because it expects that you will protect your phone. Which, for the typical use, I'm okay with that. I don't have any problems with using Linux. But if I were to compare a Linux phone and a Android phone, the Android phone is a lot more secure. For one thing, just to give you an example, Android has what is called SE Linux, which is the security system on security policies on Android, which you can also find on Linux. However, on Linux, no one has made the adjustments to SE Linux at the app level, permission level that's been done on Android. No one sat around and done that. So, for example, if you use like UBports, Ubuntu Touch, even with SE Linux, there's no, they don't use SE Linux, they use the other one. But it doesn't have the way of blocking on an app by app level because they don't have a permission system to limit apps by permission as they've already done on this. So although the mechanism is there to do it, it doesn't exist. So no one's done it on Linux. Somebody has to spend the time to do that by app. You have to compile each app to security level, and that's what Google does on Android. So that doesn't exist. Secondly, Android has encryption. Okay, so the Google phone is completely encrypted because encryption is built into, somebody asked the encryption of a Android, and Android comes encrypted. It's built into Android. All iPhones and Androids are encrypted. So you need to put the passcode in to decrypt it. And that doesn't exist on Linux. Okay, so they have no mechanism to implement that on mobile. You can implement it on a desktop, but there's no way to implement that on mobile because there's no easy mechanism to unlock it. So it's not built into the login. You know, there's certain things that are just not built into it yet because, you know, they haven't gotten to that. So they're kind of like apples and oranges. Now, what the nice thing is about an Android, about Linux, it is the OEM drivers. Most of the drivers on Linux are open source. Since, you know, to get approved with a driver, you got to go to the kernel and get it approved, and somebody has to look at the source code, right? So somebody has to approve to be put into this as a driver. So because of that, then Linux is safer from a privacy point of view. You're certain there's no hidden code doing strange things on there because the source code is exposed. However, that aside, the Android phone is at the moment more secure because Linux hasn't spent the time yet to work on mobile. Okay, are we giving up our info by having a phone? Yes, you are. But if you, what's the nonsense about Apple dropping FB and IG? I don't even know why all of these companies pre-install Facebook and Instagram on the phone. Why do they even do that? So yeah, so they don't pre-install a big deal. Is that you consider that a big win? People will install it right after they get it. Should we be going all in on buying up IPv4 addresses? Why do you have a stock of them? The people who already have the address already have the address. Also, what would you do with people later? I'm saying those that they have details off. What details? Don't know what that means. Where can I buy your phone? I go to my app, Brax Me. So everything that I do, don't email me. A lot of you email, and it's like, did you watch my email videos? Email is not secure. So it's a little secure for me because I have my own email server, but it's not secure for you. So yeah, don't use email. I'm a little bit more secure than you are because you're sending it to my server. But don't email. Go to Brax Me. And some of you complain, well, I don't want to use your app. Unfortunately, in order for me to service you, I need to have information on who we're talking to know the same party, what you ordered, where we're going to ship it to, and all this. And, we have an order entry system. And we can't do that unless you go to the app. Because people email me saying, what happened to my order? And people don't use the real name on Brax.me. So we don't even know who you are, and we don't even know what you bought. We don't know what you paid, how much you paid. We don't know anything unless you use the store on Brax.me. Then we can check and say, oh, you ordered this. Oh, this order's late. And then a lot of people, this is kind of an interesting thing about people. I understand you're concerned about privacy. That's why you're watching my channel here. But guys, I can't ship a product to you if I don't have a shipping name. Okay? I mean, if you're going to have a alternate identity, then do so, but coordinate it at the receiving end. But if you want to receive the product, you have to use a real name that will get the product delivered. There's no way for me to get around that. Somebody had me send a product and did not give me a name, and I used whatever name they put on Brax.me, and of course the phone came back. So, I mean, I don't know what you want me to do. I mean, put the name on there that you expect, to get shipped to. Why worry about me? I'm the one protecting your privacy. I'm not going to go reveal your data. So, yeah, I'm the last one you need to worry about, for goodness sakes. You're not buying illegal drugs here. You're buying a phone. A phone. Come on. There's nothing secret about buying a phone. Okay? So, this is the funny part too. It's kind of like not connected, but it's just funny. So, I sell VPNs, right? So Bytes VPN is my VPN, and a lot of you are on it, right? Because you're on my channel. And Google or YouTube will then give us all CAPTCHA codes, specifically on YouTube and Google, because there's so many of you on my channel going on YouTube and watching the same video, meaning my videos. And it makes Google suspicious because, of course, we have, shared block of IP addresses, and they wonder. And, well, we can't help that. So can't help it because it just so happens that the population is using all Google and YouTube. So we have no escape. So that's okay. I mean, they learn eventually and they stop bugging you. But unfortunately, it's unique to the population here. We can't escape that because they're tracking by IP address, and they say, wait a minute. All of you are in the same IP address. So what Google actually does is, if any of you buy my VPN and start using one of the IP addresses from my VPN, they subtract from my subscribers list. So my subscribers count is lower by the number of subscribers. I mean, the number of VPN subscribers, 1-to-1. I knew that before. I could see it. Somebody buys a VPN, when I was still a small channel, every time somebody buys a VPN, the number goes down. It's funny. So, talk about de-Googled on Google services. Well, so what? They actually made my de-Googled video viral. That was YouTube that did that. They don't care. They make money. They made a lot of money from me from those videos. So do they care? I mean, they keep the money in their pockets. Money is money. So Google likes the money. So it doesn't matter what I talk about as long as they make money. I have no chance of beating Google, so it doesn't matter. Can I run Android apps on the Google phone? Yes, you can run, as I said earlier, you can run most apps on the Google phone, including Waze, and the exception being you cannot run any Google apps. They won't work except for Waze, like you can't run YouTube. But there's a substitute. So instead of YouTube, use NewPipe. NewPipe will go to YouTube. Instead of Gmail, you use K9. And you can put Gmail on there. There's a substitute for everything. Instead of Google Maps, you use OpenStreetMaps from F-Droid. Instead of all the calculator apps, the weather apps, there's substitutes for everything. So I don't really miss anything. The only thing that does not work well on a Google device, the Google device, would be anything with payments. So certain things do not work too well, and certain things stop working. Like Uber used to work, and then it stopped working. Uber driver never worked. Uber or Lyft driver never worked, but the passenger ones work. But you can still use the browser, so it doesn't mean you can't use Uber. Just go to the browser. If the app doesn't work, go to the browser and run it from there. It'll work. So you'll stick with Apple. You'll be spied on by Apple, since there's no way, as I mentioned earlier, there's no way to de-Apple an Apple device. Oops, my light went out here. So there's no way to de-Apple an iOS phone. Okay, so if you're thinking there's some way that you can do that, no. So I'd rather not have my phone spied on. I don't want anyone spying on my phone, whoever it is. So my iOS phones never leave the house, especially with contact tracing, and they force you to install 14.4, and I had 13.4 installed, and they force you to install 14.4, which has the contact tracing stuff on there, and they make it really difficult so that somebody will make a mistake and install 14.4, and mistakes can be made because you can't reverse it. So really bugs me. It's just hate what Apple does and forcing that. So I don't, if you're like very fond of Apple, I don't know why, because you think you're any safer. They know everything about you. Thank you, K Hall. Thank you very much. So in my case, I really have switched. I used to be a heavy iOS user, and now I'm completely de-Googled only, and I'm going to tell you, it's just refreshing. Because I go out and I have my phone with me, and I know that no one knows where I am. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows anything about what I'm doing on the phone, unless I go to Facebook on the app. But assuming you don't go to Facebook, the phone is actually safe. Phone's actually safe. Do the Google work with YubiKeys? They should. Yeah, they should. You can randomize MAC addresses, but it's already randomized MAC addresses are already built into Android 10. So you don't have to worry about that. Randomized IP addresses, MAC addresses, are built into Android 10, but there's some limitations there, okay? It's not 100%. Do not use private DNS. I always turn that off. Use a VPN. Do not use private DNS. Okay? And I should explain why. So let's say you turn on private DNS. Now what you're saying is that your DNS activity will now go to Google. Google can now see what it is that you're doing, what websites you visit. It's encrypted from anyone else, but Google can see it. So what the fuck is the point of that? Okay, here's the other point of it. So you encrypt your DNS, you go to Google, but it bypasses the VPN. So basically, the private DNS goes directly to Google, has your IP address, the real one. So you just introduce a spy machine again. No, don't do that. Please, do not use private DNS. That's another trick. That's a trick, okay? Trick. Somebody is arguing with me, but yeah, I'm encrypting my DNS. Encrypting to who? To the DNS. Well, I'm using Cloudflare. I'm using Cloudflare, so I don't have to worry about Google. Well, the point is Android gives you a choice. Private DNS, that goes to Google. That doesn't go to Cloudflare. That goes to Google. So no, absolutely do not use private DNS. I have it disabled. When we send you the phones, it's set to disable. You cannot use 1.1.1.1 because that's Cloudflare. and it doesn't. You don't on a Android. You just say private DNS. You don't configure where it's going to go, which will go to Google. So I already talked about the Sailfish OS. I don't see the advantage of using Sailfish OS if you're going to do Android apps. And Sailfish OS is not more secure. It's less secure than a Google phone. So I'm okay with using Sailfish OS. I think it's fine, but nothing much to gain there. Sailfish OS is it's a EU OS. So if you're in the EU, you can use it. I have no problem with that. I think it's fine. It's not the most safe from a cybersecurity point of view, but at least it's private, and that's okay with me. So from a privacy point of view, you can use Sailfish OS. From a security point of view, Android's better. Pure Android. Pine phone with Manjaro. Well, the problem is, what is the point talking about Linux phones when they're not completely running yet? As long as I'm still seeing people saying, well, my modem doesn't work. I mean, that's kind of basic. My data doesn't work. My power management doesn't work. These are things that I hope was going to be solved by now. I use Lineage OS. That to me is the standard. I use Lineage OS myself. Jinx. So all my phones are installed with Lineage OS. Matthew, I do not think of it, to be honest with you. First of all, Graphene is not made to run any kind of Android app. It's made to run pure F-Droid. So, you have to be hardcore. So that's not the normal user. So, I don't see the point of that. That's it's really more of a cybersecurity app than a privacy app. From a privacy point of view, it's not needed. You can have more flexibility with what I have. Okay. So I don't use it. So is Rethink DNS App Safe? No, don't use any kind of DNS anything. What you need is a VPN, because a VPN will aggregate your DNS queries to the VPN server. Rob thinks he's trolled all the time. That's funny. What happens if there comes a day when you can't run a privacy phone? I'm sure we'll find a way. Because the more we have less privacy phones, the more incentive there is for somebody to build one. There'll be an economic reason to do it. Okay? Do a video explaining landline phones? Do I need to do a video explaining landline phones? Guys, a computer is a much better choice than a phone. I know you're in love with your phones. You get the latest models, and I can't believe that people actually pay so much for this phone used. This is Pixel 4, like I said, and they pay so much for this phone, and brand new. It's also very expensive, and you can get a computer for the same price. You can get a laptop for the same price, a powerful laptop that has a bigger screen and lightweight with a keyboard, and it doesn't have the sensors. So what makes a phone unique is it has all the sensors to track you, GPS and all that, Wi-Fi triangulation, that it cannot do on a computer. So a computer is a lot safer. I don't even care what OS you use, it's going to be safer than a phone. Okay? 10 to 1. Okay, so if you have a choice between moving everything to the small screen that you just love, Why not go to a large screen? Get a sucking laptop. So take all the billionaires' money away from them. Do I need a new SIM card for my Brax phone? Yes. No. No, you can move a SIM card over. Yeah, it's the same thing. You can move a SIM card from one phone to the other, assuming they're both designed for the same carrier, meaning GSM or CDMA or both. Okay, so obviously you can't take a GSM, a CDMA carrier like Verizon chip and put it on a GSM only phone. That's not going to work. But other than that, if you buy Pixels, for example, Pixels support CDMA and GSM, so this works with everything. Where some models work only with AT&T and T-Mobile, and some, and what? Please explain how you protect yourself as a YouTube broadcaster. There are things that meticulous, there are things that I cannot really talk about because the preparations for being a broadcaster happen in advance. It didn't happen now. Okay, the reason I'm able to do this on YouTube is because I took the precautions beforehand. So my presence on the internet was very, very controlled. And if you look at my identity on the internet, everything that you will find is related to my broadcast. There's nothing else but my broadcast. And that's part of the planning. So it's kind of a long-term plan. So it's not something you can just, if you didn't think it over, you're going to have to plan that out. Your name and how it's out on the internet and so on. So you got to plan it out. Your pictures, what photos do you have on the internet? See, I don't have to worry about that. That was taken care of before. Okay? So in my case, it's something that I can do uniquely and not too many people can. Especially if you've been hanging around Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of late it's kind of late to say, I'm going to make a YouTube channel now about privacy because, you're going to have to use a mask. Okay, Marcus Will, thank you. Any thoughts on WhatsApp new policy, please? I have a video on that. Marcus, there's a video directly answering that. How many clones would it take to confuse the AI robots? Can you stop referring to other VPNs? There's only one VPN product. It's called Bytes VPN, made for this channel. I'm going to tell you right now that I've been offered sponsorship from many of the VPN channels, VPN products. All the popular ones, they've come to my channel saying, can we be your sponsor? And suffice it to say that obviously I'm not going to do that. So I have my own VPN product. I don't need to notice that I don't really do much advertising on my channel. I don't think it's worth it because I don't want to be beholden to certain advertisers where I have to, speak nicely about them if, depending what they do. So, I'm pretty much untainted here. So having my own products makes it easier for me. I'm able to support my company and provide you with a solution, and I don't need to involve anybody else with it. Can I use WhatsApp? You can use WhatsApp and WeChat, but why would you want to? You can do it. Would you want to do it? It will destroy your privacy. So why do it? What if you gave them an ultimatum to stop keeping logs? Uh, what? This VPN is better because it's not what? Um, I love phone. What should I do? Did I miss another part of that? I mean, let me. You're repeating that. I love phone, but I use my ThinkPad 90% of the time. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Use your ThinkPad. I have learned. I have learned to set my phone aside. To be honest with you, I don't use my phone a lot. It's I'm on the road, fine, but I'm not like doing this on it. I'd rather have a computer. And especially, a lot of you are like used to large computers, and ultralights are so light. I mean, they're light. You can hold in one hand. They're big, and they're strong, and they have limited ability to spy on you. And you can remove the spyware on Windows, for example, or you can use Linux. But even if you didn't want to do that, then it's still not enough spying there. Ubuntu Touch no longer works in the US. So that's the problem. I was, degoogling, not degoogling, but putting Linux into Nexus 5 phones with Ubuntu Touch. That was one of the things I was doing last year. And unfortunately, then the carrier said, we're not going to allow Ubuntu Touch anymore. I mean, Nexus 5 anymore. So the Nexus 5 stopped running. So I couldn't do it for people anymore. So I had to stop doing Ubuntu Touch. So yeah, so that's and they don't support that many new models. So I'm kind of stuck. The model that I hope they would support would be a Pine phone, and to be honest, they're way behind here. They need to support more modern LTE devices if we're going to survive and be able to do Ubuntu Touch. Okay? So, I'm your new subscriber. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. What are the ramifications of signing into an account on an app like Kindle Spotify? That's okay, A. Sanchez, because it's isolated. So you sign into a app, it's like signing in on a computer. It's isolated. They know you signed in, but app number 2 doesn't know app number 1. So Spotify can't say what Amazon's doing. Amazon can't tell what Spotify is doing. But Google could find out what both are doing. That doesn't exist anymore. So no, you can sign into to Spotify, Amazon, all that. The only one that you cannot do, the only one that you should not ever sign into, is of course Facebook, because it will actually create a connection. The Vola phone is a Linux phone and Android phone, if I recall. You can do both, which is fine. So, are there any ways to stop ultrasonic hacking? Yeah, turn off the microphone. Turn off the microphone on your phone. So on the Google phone, there's a sensors off button. You can press that, and when you're not needing to do anything. Thank you, Brian Jones. Thank you. Now, Volaphone is not a European phone, so it's not something that's common in the U.S. So, but to be honest, I'll be honest with you. I mean, let's not be dishonest here. These are much better phones, okay? Because those phones are slower, older CPUs. These phones are better because high volume. You can't really match, the Android phones. Like this is last year's phone. This is last year's model, 2020. Very, sophisticated phone. It's got everything on there, waterproof and all that. Uh, the problem with Linux phone is catching up, but it's a catch-up game, so they're always behind. So the CPU is always much slower. I don't do anything with Huawei. I don't do anything with those Chinese models. So uh, so I can't I can't speak to you can't even buy one here anyway. So it doesn't matter. This is what I'm holding is a this is the most expensive model we have. This is a Pixel 4, and here's the big one of that, the big brother. Okay, these are the two most. This is very expensive. So just so you see the difference there, the difference in size. Okay, so the big one is the expensive model, and the little one is slightly cheaper. This is the Pixel 4, Pixel 4 XL. Same with iPhone 11, iPhone 11 Max, or whatever they call it now. The last iPhone I bought was an iPhone 10. I haven't bought an iPhone since. I use Spotify. I mean, it's fine. I'd rather use Spotify than Apple Music. Okay, guys. So I'm out of time. So I have to sign off now. So thank you for watching, and sorry for giving you the wrong start time there. It's 8 p.m. Even if I make a mistake, my time slot on Friday is 8 p.m. Pacific time to 9:30 Pacific time, which I'm now 1 minute past. Okay, so I don't care about phones. I like the color. What does that mean? Then find a nice colored laptop. Okay, so thank you so much, guys. Thank you for watching. And by the way, give me input on what you want me to talk about. So I never know what videos go viral. The things that the Google video I did that went viral, I had no idea that it would go viral. I mean, I thought it was the most useless video I made, and then it went viral. Who would ever know? So there's no more Windows phones that work anymore. They're probably all 3G doesn't work anymore. Just like you can't, all the Blackberries don't work anymore. They're done. So 2021, no more Blackberries. We last year was the end of that. Okay, so thank you very much, guys, and I will see you in next week's video. I was hoping that to get some rest and maybe do some sailing, and I haven't gone sailing since December, beginning of December. I haven't gone sailing. I've been so busy with all this. So hopefully I'll get the chance to relax a little bit. So thank you, my friends, and I'll see you on Brax Me, and that's where you can also find the products. I have a stock of the Google phones there, by the way. We have almost every model at the moment, as of right now. So if you're interested, you can find it there. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.